Why does God allow good people to suffer? This question has torn through human hearts for thousands of years, leaving believers wrestling with doubt and skeptics pointing fingers at divine silence. Tonight, we're diving into one of the most profound mysteries ever recorded, a story that will challenge everything you think you know about justice, faith, and the nature of God Himself. Picture this: a man who has everything, wealth beyond measure, a loving family, respect from everyone who knows him, and a relationship with God that burns brighter than the morning sun. He's the kind of person you'd point to and say, "See, good things happen to good people." His name is Job, and he's about to become the center of a cosmic experiment that will shake the foundations of heaven and earth. But here's what most people don't understand about Job's story. This isn't just ancient literature or moral philosophy. This is a window into the deepest workings of reality itself, revealing truths about suffering that most religious teachers are afraid to discuss. By the time we're finished tonight, you'll see why this ancient account holds answers to questions that keep you awake at 3 a.m, wondering if there's any meaning to the pain you're experiencing. The story begins in a place most of us never think about, the heavenly council chambers where decisions affecting entire civilizations are made. God is meeting with celestial beings, discussing the affairs of Earth like generals reviewing battlefield reports. Among these divine messengers stands one figure who doesn't quite fit, someone whose very presence changes the temperature of the room. They call him Satan, but that's not a proper name like we often think. It's a title, a job description that literally means the adversary or the accuser. Think of him as heaven's prosecuting attorney, the one who questions every motive, challenges every claim of goodness, and refuses to accept anything at face value. He's the cosmic skeptic who sees manipulation and self-interest behind every act of devotion. When God brings up Job, praising his righteousness and integrity, Satan immediately pounces. His argument cuts straight to the heart of human nature. Of course, Job serves you faithfully. Look at everything you've given him. Take away his prosperity, his health, his family, and watch how quickly his worship turns to cursing. And it's a challenge that strikes at the very core of authentic faith versus transactional religion. What happens next will shock you. God agrees to the test, not because he's cruel or sadistic, but because something far deeper is at stake here. The question isn't just whether Job will remain faithful, it's whether genuine love for God can exist when all earthly rewards are stripped away. Can someone worship the Creator simply for who he is, rather than for what he provides? The devastation that follows is almost unbearable to read. In a single day, Job loses his livestock, his servants, and all 10 of his children. His world collapses so completely that friends who come to comfort him sit in stunned silence for 7 days, unable to find words adequate for such catastrophic loss. Yet incredibly, Job's initial response defies every expectation. Instead of cursing God, he worships. But this is just the beginning. What unfolds next reveals layers of human psychology and divine wisdom that most people miss entirely. Job's friends arrive with their neat theological formulas, absolutely certain they understand how God's justice works. They arrive with their theological textbooks and their religious formulas, convinced they hold the master key to understanding divine justice. These well-meaning friends represent something we see everywhere today: the desperate human need to make sense of senseless suffering by creating neat little boxes that explain everything. Their logic seems bulletproof at first glance. God is righteous, they argue. The universe operates on perfect moral mathematics. Good deeds equal blessings, bad deeds equal punishment. Therefore, if Job is suffering catastrophically, he must have committed some catastrophic sin. It's spiritual arithmetic, and the numbers have to add up. For 34 chapters, these friends become increasingly aggressive in their accusations. They start with gentle suggestions that maybe Job should examine his heart for hidden sins. But as Job continues protesting his innocence, their tone shifts. They begin crafting elaborate lists of possible crimes he must have committed. Perhaps he oppressed the poor, they suggest. Maybe he withheld bread from the hungry or clothing from the naked. Their certainty grows more vicious with each exchange. But here's what makes this dialogue so psychologically brilliant. Job's friends aren't evil people trying to hurt him. They're terrified people trying to protect themselves. Because if Job truly is innocent and still suffering this horrifically, then their entire worldview crumbles. If bad things can happen to genuinely good people for no discernible reason, then none of them are safe. Their accusations aren't really about Job at all. They're about preserving their own sense of security in an unpredictable universe. Meanwhile, Job's emotional state becomes a roller coaster that anyone who's faced inexplicable tragedy will recognize instantly. In some moments, he maintains rock-solid faith, declaring that even if God kills him, he'll still trust in divine wisdom. But in other passages, his anguish pours out in torrents of raw honesty that would make most religious people uncomfortable. He accuses God of being indifferent, unjust, even corrupt in his dealings with humanity. This psychological realism is what makes Job's story so powerful. He doesn't maintain perfect spiritual composure throughout his ordeal like some religious superhero. He wrestles, he doubts, he rages, he pleads. His faith doesn't eliminate his humanity, it coexists with it in all its messy, contradictory complexity. As the debate intensifies, Job makes an increasingly desperate demand. He wants God himself to appear and provide a direct explanation for this suffering. He's tired of secondhand theology and armchair philosophy. He wants to take his case directly to the cosmic courtroom and demand answers from the ultimate authority. And then something extraordinary happens. God actually shows up. But when the divine voice finally speaks from the whirlwind, the response is nothing like what Job expected or what his friends predicted. God doesn't provide a point-by-point explanation of the suffering. He doesn't reveal the heavenly conversation with Satan. He doesn't even directly address Job's specific complaints about injustice. Instead, God does something far more profound and unsettling. He takes Job on a guided tour of the universe itself. So where does this leave us when we're facing our own seasons of inexplicable pain? Job's story doesn't give us the neat answers we desperately want. It doesn't provide a formula for avoiding suffering or a guarantee that good people will always prosper. Instead, it offers something far more valuable and infinitely more challenging. The wisdom of Job teaches us that our perspective is breathtakingly limited compared to the vast complexity of existence itself. When we demand explanations for our suffering, we're essentially asking God to compress the infinite workings of reality into concepts our finite minds can grasp. It's like an ant trying to understand quantum physics, or a child demanding to know why adults make the decisions they do. But here's the beautiful paradox. Job never gets his explanation, yet he finds peace. He learns to trust in divine wisdom even when that wisdom operates beyond his comprehension. This isn't blind faith or intellectual suicide. It's the recognition that some truths are too large for human understanding, yet too important to abandon. The next time life hits you with inexplicable tragedy, remember Job's journey. Your demand for answers isn't wrong, but your peace doesn't depend on receiving them. Sometimes the deepest wisdom lies not in understanding why we suffer, but in learning to trust the one whose perspective encompasses everything we cannot see. The question isn't whether God is good despite our suffering. The question is whether we can find the courage to trust in goodness that transcends our ability to comprehend it. That's the wisdom Job discovered in the whirlwind, and it's the wisdom that can carry you through whatever storm you're facing right now.